I'm helping a proud Air Force veteran buy a home. He is using his VA loan benefit, and I'm so excited and honored to be helping him. I have the utmost respect for our military servicemen and women, and it's a good time to talk about the VA loan program and the pros and cons to the home buyer and the home seller. Very quickly, let's go over some of how this works. So leave a comment below if you're familiar with the VA loan home buying process. If you've served in our nation's military, you may have earned the right and the privilege to be able to buy a home using the VA loan benefit, VA being the Veteran Administration. So the Veteran Administration has some specific requirements when our veterans are buying a home. And there are pros and cons to using this benefit. One of the big pros for the home buyer is that they can put 0% down. Most other home purchases require at least 3% of the purchase price paid in advance as a down payment on the home. VA loan buyers are usually able to purchase the home with 0% down. And they can do that to keep the cash in their pocket for other things, keep it invested elsewhere. Now, often when I am helping home sellers sell their homes and we are evaluating offers, we will look and see how much of a down payment a home buyer who has made an offer on a home is planning to put down towards their down payment. Sometimes a lower down payment can mean that getting their financing to go through may be a little bit more tricky. The more down payment a home buyer is putting down, the less risk the lending institution is taking on. So sometimes the less stringent they will be in their loan criteria and their underwriting process, which is where the bosses at the bank, if you will, go through all the paperwork and make sure that they really think that the home buyer is going to be able to afford the home and will be paying their mortgage payments every month and paying the bank back. Now, with the VA loan, that is totally not necessarily the case. If we see a VA loan offer come in with a 0% down payment, it doesn't really reflect one way or the other on the home buyer's financial situation. It's a benefit of the VA loan program that they can put 0% down. Now, a home seller and their real estate professional, their agent, still may want to and has the right usually to reach out to the lending institution and say, is this loan going to happen? Can this home buyer really afford to buy the home that they're making an offer on? And that's still a good conversation to have. But that 0% down should not necessarily be a red flag to a home seller and can be a big benefit to the home buyer. It lets them keep that cash in their pocket or invested elsewhere. Now, you don't have to put 0% down. Some people choose to go ahead and make a down payment if that's where they want to invest their funds. And of course, that is their option and up to them. So other pros and cons of the VA loan exhibit that is a part of a contract when you contract a home and you plan to get a VA loan is that the VA will require a termite inspection. So most home buyers choose to have a home inspection, and often they let the home inspector guide them on any other inspections that may be needed. For instance, if a home inspector says, we really should get an expert opinion on this roof. I see some things on the roof that may or may not be a problem. Most home inspectors are pretty good with roofs, but just as an example, you may then need a roofer to come out and give an estimate on specific repairs or replacement of a roof. And some people let the home inspector say, I'm seeing what might be some termite questions. Let's get a wood destroying or wood infestation report done. Now, some people, again, wait for the home inspector to guide them on what additional inspections might be worthwhile, such as a roof or termites or other inspections. With a VA loan, the VA goes ahead and says you need to have a termite inspection done up front. Even if there's absolutely no sign of any termite damage or anything that leads us to suspect, it's still something the home buyer usually, though it is negotiable, the home seller could pay for it. The home buyer or the home seller, somebody has to pay to have a termite inspector come out and provide a termite letter or a wood infestation report, same thing. Just to make sure that there are no termite problems with the home. Another thing that the VA loan exhibit requires is that the home buyer or the home seller test the water. So that's another thing. If it's on a well, someone's going to have to do a water test. And the VA, and this is going to be with any mortgage loan that you get, the lender is going to send out, with a conventional loan, it's called an appraiser, to provide an appraisal report. With the VA loan, I believe they call it a VA certificate of value. So the VA is going to send out an appraiser to provide a certificate of value for the home. What we see very often is that appraiser may say, I actually had this on my personal home that I was selling to a VA buyer. I had a front porch on the home that had settled and had a little bit of a dip and a slope in it. And it had been that way. I'd owned the home for 9 years. It'd been that way since before I owned it and never caused any sort of problems. But the VA certificate of value, meaning for the VA buyer to be able to get his loan for the agreed upon purchase price, we were going to be able to make that happen if I got that dip removed from the front porch. The front porch wasn't bothering me as the seller. It never had. I'd lived there for years. It wasn't bothering the home buyer. We felt like it was cosmetic. It wasn't a concern to the home buyer or seller, but for the buyer to be able to get his loan, we had to repair the porch. So we did. That's just an example of something that can come up with a VA loan buyer, is that there may be an item that is not of concern to the home buyer or the home seller, but it has to be addressed before the buyer can get their loan. Another example I had was a home had an outbuilding on the property, a tool shed, and the tool shed had attached to the side of it a lean-to. The shed itself was fine. The lean-to had some wood that was old and falling apart. And before the buyer was going to be able to get their loan, that wood had to be completely repaired and replaced or removed from the property. And again, it wasn't something that was bothering the seller, it wasn't bothering the home buyer, but we had to find a resolution for that closing to happen. So we did. Those resolutions are negotiable. So who's going to pay to have that work done? That is negotiable. It can be paid by the seller, it can be paid by the buyer. You just have to be careful. It's tricky for a home buyer to make repairs on a property they don't yet own, so perhaps it's something they could pay for at closing. Usually we're pretty good at working something out, but that is something to be aware of. It's again, as we're talking about the pros and cons of a VA loan. So the extra inspections, there may be extra repairs, but usually they are not insurmountable. Also, there is something in a VA loan called a VA loan amendment, which is part of a contract, called an amendatory clause. This is common in conventional loans. It's similar to an appraisal contingency. It says that should the home value come in lower than the agreed upon purchase price, that the home buyer doesn't have to buy the home. They still can if they want to, but that they can get out of their contract without penalty should the value that they've agreed to pay not be there. That's something that is protecting the buyer. Of course, that also is negotiable. Should that value come in low, the home buyer can go back to the seller, let them know, hey, here's what the value came back, at what amount. I can only get a loan up to that amount. Let's talk about potential solutions to how we can still make this closing happen. And there are a couple different ways to approach that. Perhaps the buyer is willing to pay a little bit more cash out of pocket. Perhaps the home seller is willing to lower the purchase price a little bit, or maybe some of both. There's also a few other solutions. So that's what your real estate professional, such as me, is here to help you with. Two other things in the VA loan exhibit that becomes part of a VA loan buyer's contract is if the home is on well water but has public water available, and similarly, if the home is on a septic tank but has public sewer available, sometimes the certificate of value, the appraiser, may say the home needs to be converted and switched over to public water and sewer. in order for the buyer to get their loan. They don't always require it if it's available, but they may. So having that work done and who's going to pay for it is negotiable, but it is something that might come up with a VA loan buyer. And when we're talking about these repairs that may be required for the VA loan buyer to be able to get his loan, be it something like a dip in the front porch or the lean-to on the shed, when you initially make the offer and decide to go under contract together, the home buyer and the home seller, we don't know what items may arise. The way the contract is written is it says the home seller will be on the hook for paying X amount towards these repairs that may come up. And that amount is negotiable from the get-go, from the onset. So for example, you may want to say from the beginning, $500, $1,000. The home seller is not going to be on the hook for paying more than that should these repairs come up. Let's say it's $1,000. So if there is something that needs to be repaired, it's under $1,000, the home seller has already agreed in the initial contract that they're willing to take on that amount of repair cost. If a repair costs more than that, then the way the contract is usually written is that the seller does not have to do it and the buyer does not have to move forward with the purchase of the home. They can go ahead, get out of the contract without penalty, meaning get any deposits back, and the seller can move on with a different buyer or put the home back on the market. Of course, all this is negotiable. So some home buyers and home sellers keep that amount a little bit lower initially. Some do it a little bit higher. The point is, once it is known what repairs, if any, need to happen, then the real estate professionals and the home buyer and the home seller need to have a conversation, figure out the best path forward. Maybe that limit was $1,000 and the repair is going to cost $12,000. Who's going to pay for that extra $200? That's negotiable. My dad served in the U.S. Army, retired as Lieutenant Colonel John Stone. I'm very proud of him and his service. My brother-in-law, Colonel Mark Dotson, served in the Army as well. My current client was in the Air Force. I love helping our military veterans, and I am very honored always to get the opportunity to work with them. The VA loan benefit is something that scares some home sellers. It shouldn't. It is a right and a privilege that our veterans have earned to be able to use, and it does not have to mean that the home sale is going to be any more tricky or any less advantageous to a home seller than working with someone using a conventional loan. With these few extra hurdles to navigate, some people may wonder, is it worth it for the home buyer to use their VA loan benefit? So we've already talked about one of the main benefits is not having to have a down payment if you don't want to as a VA loan buyer. There are other benefits too, including lower interest rates for VA loans. That can be significant. Also, lower closing costs to the veteran buyer is a huge benefit, and you can use this benefit multiple times over the course of your lifetime. You can only have your VA loan on one property at a time. So when you are moving, such as my client I'm helping right now, he will sell the home he's currently living in and then buy his next home. We can do the closings on the same day, but they can't have the VA loan on more than one home at a time. But again, there are so many benefits from, also no private mortgage insurance, so no PMI, better interest rates, and no down payment, and lower closing costs. But that is a quick overview of some of the pros and cons of the VA loan process for home buyers and for home sellers. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you have any questions. Also, tell me about your experience, and I'd love to hear about your military service. Leave a quick shout out comment below letting me know about you or your loved one's military service. We thank you for serving our country and thank you for your service.